Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world of fitness about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Mike Service, and on today's episode, we have a return guest, one of the most recognizable names within the CrossFit space, Mr. Jason Khalipa himself, an absolute beast of an athlete and entrepreneur. We go through some of his new endeavors in both the fitness space with his Jiu Jitsu and now into the tactical games world with all the great work he's doing there. Jason is always very open with us about his personal life, and we appreciate his honesty, not only when it comes to the great successes that he's had, but also many of the challenges along the journey. Jason has been a staple within the CrossFit space as a games champion and running one of the most successful gyms and programming entities, NCFit, for a number of years. He is now expanding his programming into these new areas with his Train Hard business. You won't find many people as ambitious and thoughtful as Jason is. Anytime I speak with him, I'm always motivated to get out there and keep pushing and work just a little bit harder. He's trying to get me now to do some jiu-jitsu, which I'm still a little hesitant on, but if anyone can get me to do it, it's Jason. We hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as we did.
It is nice to catch up with you handsome fellas.
You too, man.
Having a good day. Look at that jacket you got on, Dave. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we made these 2011. We made these for our last Power Monkey camp for our 20th anniversary. Our little bomber jackets for all the coaches and the staff. It was a nice little gift.
Dude, so what year are you guys on the Power Monkey camp now?
Starting year 11.
Year 11? Dude.
Yeah.
Power Monkey. It's 22 Power Monkey years, but it's 11 real world years. So.
I got to tell you, I mean, people always talk about, the average business fails in whatever, like as an entrepreneur, but to put on a camp every year,
Twice a year.
11 years, twice a year, right?
Twice a year. Yeah.
For 11 years?
Yeah, man. I don't know how we've done. Thank you very much. I mean, coming from you too, man, with your business acumen, I really appreciate that. We, every year we're like, man, can we still keep this thing going? And we still haven't had you out there, man. I don't know. We've tried, and schedules haven't lined up, but we got to make it happen.
Yeah, man. At some point, I gotta, and then finding subjects that I want to coach or teach about, right? Like, for me, I mean, I've just evolved, right? I mean, just like everybody, and especially with how much I'm doing with tactical stuff and firearms, but mainly in jiu-jitsu and that journey. And I just look at training, I look at fitness through a completely different lens today than I did, 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatnot. Like I took a class yesterday at our gym, and it's just different to me. And that's okay, right? It's just fitness has changed the way I look at it compared to where I used to. Like back in the day, I'd be like, Dave, teach me how to hold a handstand for longer because I'm trying to win the CrossFit Games. Now it's like, dude, if I never do another handstand again, like I'm okay with that.
Don't say that. Don't say that,
man. Oh man, blasphemy, Jason.
But that's how my goals have just evolved, right?
Yeah.
Now here's to go back on what I just said. I was we were having a dinner party the other day, and you'd get a kick out of this. So we got some kids over, and they were like, my son is in 5th grade, and no, 5th grade, 4th grade, and there was a bunch of kids over that were that same age, so like 9, 10 years old. And one of the girls was a gymnast, and they started talking about gymnastics and whatnot. And we had just eaten, and one of the girls like, I don't know if any of the parents can do a handstand. And someone's like, I think Jason can. And sure enough, I hadn't done it in a while. Dude, I walked up and down my house after lasagna or whatever it was. Yes. And I was like, still got it. It's like riding a bike sometimes, man.
Party trick, man. Your dad for the win right there. See that? You still got it in you. It's funny you're mentioning this stuff, and 5 and 10 years ago, we got already a bunch of stuff that you talked about we want to dive into with BJJ and some other stuff. But it was really funny. Yesterday, I was just scrolling on one of my feeds, and a post came up. 10 years ago today, I was at NorCal with you, and it was a video of me working with you on muscle ups and other gymnastic stuff. It came up from 10 years ago yesterday. And I was like, that was great time being able to come down there, especially when I was at Stanford and doing stuff and just being able to kind of come down the road. But what I remember really vividly of having worked with you briefly over the years is how coachable you were, like how accepting of information you were as an athlete. There was no ego around it. It's like, if this can help me get better, tell me. I'm accepting it. I want the information. I'm going to try to apply it as best I can. Is that something that was just always a part of the way you were as an athlete and now as a businessman, just trying to be accepting of the people around you that you feel like could help you get to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm a big believer in like I think everybody's got some kind of magical ninja skill, and maybe they don't even know it yet. But if I could try and find out from different people and learn and acquire skills that are going to ultimately help me level up. And originally it was like, oh, what kind of skills can I learn to level up as a competitor so I can win the CrossFit Games? That was like the focus. Then it's like, dude, like what kind of skills and lessons can I learn to be a better husband, to be a better dad, to be a better friend? Like that's where like, and I'm not to go like holistic on it, but that's where it started to really like sink in. Like, how can I take different things from different people and different mindset tools and be the best version of myself? And but yeah, whether it's business, whether it's jujitsu, whether it's tactical games, that training has been really interesting because of just how specific it is. All of those things, seeking out experts, I think can leapfrog you 10, 20 years maybe not that much, but it could leapfrog you years in the making. And so I think it's really important.
So seeking out people in those areas, how do you do that? How do you go about finding someone who can be a mentor to be a better dad? Maybe you know what I mean? Like maybe your dad, and you just go, hey, you talked about your family and how close you are with them and how impactful your mom and dad were with your upbringing and giving you, tools to become the great dad that you are. But it can sometimes be difficult to be like, yeah, I want to emulate so-and-so person that I respect in the field. But how do you go about in your specific situation trying to seek out mentors that can be helpful?
Well, I think the first thing you need to recognize is that like no mentor will be perfect. Like I think that's something I've learned the hard way, where coming up in business, I would look at these mentors who had achieved a lot of success financially. And it's so easy to equate more money with success, right? So this guy was balling, let's just say. And so you'd look at them and you have aspirational aspects like, wow, I want to be like X person because he's rich. And then when you get to know him, and you get to see how happy they are, not happy they are, how they treat people, all the other things, you start realizing, wow, well, I can get inspired. I could take feedback. I could learn in this particular area for that person. But these other areas, I'm not as keen on like the way they do things. And I think that that's okay. Like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is like when I'm looking for people to emulate, I look for certain traits and characteristics that I could pull into me. So imagine if you're like a rubber band ball, right? And it's like you could pull a rubber band from someone, and you could learn different traits. It doesn't mean that person is perfect, and I'm surely far off from that as well. But if I could pull little nuggets from different people, I think that's ultimately how I become the best version of where I want to be. And dude, I got to tell you, like, it's just ever evolving, and every time that something comes up in life and things go on, you just grow. And like one of the questions I want to ask people in the future more often is like, what were you dead set on a year ago that you're no longer really 100% set on? Like, because just think about in your life, like think about something like 2 years ago, you were convinced that every human in the world should walk on their hands instead of their feet, whatever. And then now you're like, I don't know. But how many other things are you convinced of today that might change in the future if you keep an open mind? Is something I've been reflecting on quite a bit lately after buying my son a PlayStation 5, which I told myself I would never buy a PlayStation ever.
So what's the reevaluation at this point with the PlayStation 5? You want to throw it away?
No, so, for many years, so my son, he's about to turn 10. Ashley and I, she's my wife, we've been just not about video games ever. It's just not something that we want to have in our house. If it's at my grandparents' house, if it's at, anybody else's house, you play as much as you want. But at our house, we're not going to play video games because we think there's a lot of other things to do to preoccupy your time. That was my position. And then as you get older and you start learning, you start seeing that friends will go over to people's houses, will crush it on the basketball court, playing baseball, football, they'll exhaust themselves. Then they'll want to come inside when it's dark and they'll play Madden together. And they couldn't do that at our house. And I hadn't looked at it through that lens that it isn't just like these guys staying up all night trying to play video games. If you control it, if you manage it effectively, it could be a great tool. Where like I remember when I was a kid, we'd be skateboarding and then we'd come inside and play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater together. But I never looked at it through that lens. I just always thought it was all or nothing. But especially also we have some family things going on. Our daughter's not home right now, and so it's a good way to give an outlet that was necessary at the time. So for those reasons, like we're like, dude, hey, sometimes you guys got to admit we got to pivot. We got to pivot and go this route.
I think it's funny. I'm gonna let you jump in, Mike, but this was a point I was gonna bring up later on, but seems appropriate at this point. With your AMRAP mentality, the last point is reevaluation and essentially pivoting and figuring out when to not be stubborn, right? And to realize, hey, something needs to change. And basically what you're bringing up is, hey, I came to realization that having a video game could actually be beneficial in the long run and could give an outlet socially for my son at home and where I could be around. And so the realization on when to reevaluate is challenging to do. And I've heard you talk about micro check-ins. How do you manage the ability to reevaluate properly? Is it something you're doing on a regular basis, or, when something major happens in your life and then you kind of have to reevaluate at that point?
Yeah, I mean, so it's 10:40 here on the West Coast, and this morning and every morning as of lately, I've had to, and this is a friend of mine said this, and it's just really resonating with me. Do the things I know I need to do to feel the way I want to feel. It has been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So I need to do the things I know I need to do to feel the way I want to feel. So for example, if you go out and you binge drink all night, you're not going to feel the way you want to feel the next day. So you might not want to do that. Now, if you want to do it every now and then, like whatever, just know that it's not going to make you feel 100%. If you hydrate, you're going to feel better. If you use the sauna, cold plunge, for me, that makes me feel better. If I hit a hard workout, that makes me feel better. So these are all the things that I want to do to jumpstart my day, to put me in the right frame of mind. One of the benefits in the sauna, which I was in this morning, I did a ruck and then I went in the sauna, and that is a great opportunity to find some level of silence and to do a daily check-in on how things are going. What can I improve? And it's been something I've been thinking about a lot, and we talked about this. We were scheduled this podcast for a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately I got some tough news that my daughter was being entered into a 24/7 care facility for eating disorder. And it's a really big deal. And at the time, it was really difficult to compartmentalize. It was hard to cope with. And she had a previous leukemia diagnosis. Like, it's a whole thing, right? And the sauna has been a good opportunity for me to check in and say, hey, how am I doing today? And what do I need to reevaluate in? What priorities I need to reset? And those can be done on a micro or a big scale. So for example, her going away, that was a big, massive reset that I had to do to say, what can I do that's in my control to make sure that I'm doing the best I can for her? And those are things like educating myself, being prepared for when she does come back home, all those things. So in life, these big macro things happen. You get married, you have kids. In our case, a leukemia diagnosis, like these things happen. You have to do a macro like reevaluation on, maybe you don't compete at the CrossFit Games anymore. Maybe you're no longer hosting camp twice a year, as an example. Or you might do these micro check-ins where it's just like, hey man, I've been traveling for a week. I need to come home. I need to prioritize my kids. Let me make sure I make that adjustment.
Yeah. Jason, how old is Ava now?
She's 12, turning 13 in April 21st. So what is that? I don't know. 2 months from now, or
she'll be a teenager, and it goes by super fast. Huh? I mean, I have two little girls myself, and I mean, you've been through so much with your kids, and I thank you for sharing some of that. I know it's not easy as a dad to have to go through so much when kids are young. But family, I just want to talk about family for a second, because I think, I've heard you talk about, your dad is from Iran and your mom comes from an Italian background. So I'm Italian, family to me is everything, absolutely everything. And I run my business maybe inappropriately like a family, and I care about the people that are part of my family, my team, in the same way that I do about my family. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this as someone who cares so much about the people who are in your immediate family, and also how big your business is. I've heard, Reed Hastings is, I'm sure you've maybe even come across him being in the Bay Area as the founder of Netflix. And he's famously talked about how running a business like a family is bullshit, and how it's actually detrimental to the long-term health of a business, and how it should be more run like a sports team. Where you're trying to find the perfect person for that particular position. And I can respect that approach, and he's probably right. But in my mind, the buy-in that you get from someone who's treated like family is something that you can't get if you're just treating someone like an employee. So with someone who has had success on so many levels, and for someone who just has such a deep connection to your family, can you give me a little bit insight on how you run your business and how you feel family is maybe a connection to it?
Ah, man. I mean, that's a good question. I think that because my kids are young, I separate it a lot. My wife used to work at the company when I first started the company back in 2008. She joined the organization for like about a year, and I realized that her and I working together was not the right fit. At the time, especially then, I just didn't have the same perspective that I have today. I was really, really gritty, and I just wanted to just be successful. I wanted to grow, and sometimes those weren't aligned with other people's backgrounds or expectations. And as soon as it started to create a little bit of a wedge, even small percentage, we knew it wasn't the right time. So we ended up stopping that, and it's been great for our relationship. That being said, in the future, I'd like to see the kids get involved, but when it comes to the way we run the company, I think one of the things that I'm getting better about, and this has taken a long time to understand, I used to want to grow revenue and grow employees. That's what I used to always want to do. I used to say to myself, success was doing what I love for a living, providing that to as many people as possible so that they could impact as many people as possible. That was like my theory was like, I do what I love. You provide for these coaches, these staff, whatever it is, then make an impact on this greater community. Then you have this greater community, and what can we do with that message? Go do really cool shit, philanthropic, all kinds of stuff, right? That was my original model. But what I learned as we expanded and we grew, I think at our largest, we had 150 employees, I think was our largest. What I learned was that I wanted them to all be eating filet mignon and living a life that was fulfilled, not just skirting by. And so that's something I've been reflecting on a lot when you talk about family dynamics in the business. I do believe the best people should be in the best spots. And I think that you got to give some people grace depending on how long they've been with you for. And if they're going through a tough spot, to be able to support them, of course, just like you would a family. But I also believe that I want to have people on the team that are really compensated well. And I'd rather have less people do more and provide more and support more than to try and just have a bunch of employees that are barely getting by. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but that's been a big epiphany for me is like success is not more employees or more revenue. Success is generating profits so we can provide to our staff so we can go do cool shit and support greater things that we really care about.
Mm-hmm. Mike, Jordan, so you guys are in the future just going to be treated more like employees, not like family.
Yeah,
so.
I was just going to say I want to chime in, but then I feel like there's like a conflict of interests and obviously a bias as someone who's been a part of the family business since before we knew it was actually a business. So I think I'm obviously not the expert on this, but from my perspectives, so many times looking at small businesses, younger business, entrepreneurial type people, they look up to and they seem to gauge their success based off of what they've seen, the like quote unquote most successful, biggest ones, like you said, ballers, like the ones that just crush it. And I always fall back on, I'm always happy with Power Monkey and what we seem to reflect on a lot is like, what is success for us? Like, what do we want? Like, do we want to be gigantic and massive and, make billions of dollars? Okay. I'd also want to look at all the people that seem to fit that mold. And do I want to reflect the traits that they seem to put off? Because there's a lot of very wealthy, successful business people that are like, no, I'm unhappy and miserable. and I'm sure there's some that are, really, really happy. So I'm always interested in like that perspective. And I think you started to answer it a little bit, but just like what you're looking at for success, is that still pretty similar in the sense of where you were before? Like you're still wanting to have that impact on maybe a more global level, but with wiser, older perspective now?
That's what it is. I think for me, how I've evolved. So we started off the gym, it was CrossFit Santa Clara. Then we opened up CrossFit Mountain View. Then we're like, all right, let's have one brand. So we went underneath NorCal CrossFit and we expanded. Then we signed some big corporate wellness deals and we expanded globally. And, at one point, I think we had like 30, 40 gyms. And then COVID happened, a lot changed. We consolidated down. And I learned, right? I learned a lot about leading a team, especially across multiple countries and keeping consistency and all that kind of stuff. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. And we've had a phenomenal ride. But when you look back on like now where I'm at today, it's like I want to go out there and make the biggest impact possible while also making sure our team is able to buy houses, have kids, and are fully supported. That's really important to me. I want to be able to show up for their Thanksgiving dinner, maybe not Thanksgiving, but I want to be able to show up for dinner at their house and for them to be like, dude, family's healthy, family's happy, we're making good money, and like I love what I do. That's cool. Not, oh man, I gotta, work 2 jobs and blah, blah. So from that perspective, I guess is what I'm talking about. But so then how do you get there is a question. I want to go make a huge impact, but I also want to support people. And one of the ways you could do that is through digital. And that's kind of how we've evolved, is that we went from having all these gyms to now we own and operate 2 brick and mortar locations in the Bay Area. Plus we service a corporate wellness account for Lucasfilms in San Francisco. We service gym owners and coaches through a product called the NC Fit Collective that I think is really great for that product, right? It's a CrossFit product for gym owners. We provide all the plans. That's our digital arm of the business, and that's NC Fit. But like maybe it was a year ago, I was like, man, there's so many things I want to do that don't fit underneath the NC Fit umbrella. It just doesn't make sense. These are for gym owners or for athletes in person, and we're making a great impact. We have very successful gyms, but it doesn't make sense. There's certain things I want to do. I want to go do garage programs for people that are doing Jiu Jitsu. I want to go put out programs for people who are trying to train for the tactical games. That doesn't really fit underneath the NC Fit umbrella. Like NC Fit is more for like in brick and mortar gyms. So that's when we started talking about creating a Train Hard brand. And so in January, we launched a new brand called Train Hard by Jason Khalipa. And it's an online app. It's an online community. We have a newsletter. We have a podcast. But really what we're doing is we're trying to create a network. And so I'm starting it here in the Bay Area. Every week we do a men's club workout. We get 40, 50, 60 guys every week. We're on week 26 coming up, 25 coming up. And dude, the connections that are fostered and what we're doing there is like, it's something that gives me a lot of fulfillment. That connection, that mindset is what I want to pursue, because I think that what we could do is in-person events and through an online community that wants to have the same vision of what success looks like as a husband, as a father, we could take care of our team and make a big impact. So that's why I'm excited about both of what we're doing right now, the NC Fit umbrella and Train Hard. I could dive more into that, but that's kind of how we've evolved now.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty fascinating to me. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Train Hard portion. It's obviously the dots that we've tried to connect as well within Power Monkey. We built a pretty strong community of people that appreciate and love what we do at our camps and at our courses when we're traveling around the world. And we built the Power Monkey training app to go along with it, to say, hey, if you can't come to an event or after an event, how do we kind of stay connected with one another? Now, Train Hard, you're saying, starts to take in a little bit of your new passions, right? Moved on a little bit from CrossFit in terms of the competition world, moved a little bit into the tactical side, a little bit into more jiu-jitsu. How does Train Hard kind of give each of those different outlets a place where they feel safe and where they feel like they're being connected with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a huge believer in training hard and the benefits it has for your mental health and for your ability to show up as a husband and father. I'm a huge advocate for that. And I'm backing that up. Like, dude, I've gone through some stuff. I mean, right now, my daughter's in a 24/7 care facility. And what helps me get through that is training hard. And I want to spread that to more men so that they could do the things that I care about, which is train, protect, provide. These are 3 things that are like core to my soul, which is I train so I can protect, meaning run, jump, climb, lift. Sure. Is jiu-jitsu incorporated in that? Is maybe tactical type stuff? Sure. But at the cornerstone, I don't care how good of a jiu-jitsu fighter you are. If you can't run, if you can't jump, if you can't catch up with a stroller that's going down the street, it doesn't matter, right? So this idea of protecting, I think, is really important. If you don't have the fitness to do that, we got to start today. But we also talk about this idea of providing. This is really important to me as well. And at the corner of that is this idea of providing experiences. As a husband, as a father, like I really care that if my kids want to go do something ever, I never want to be limited by my fitness, ever. Like if my son wants to go, every day he comes home, and you guys probably experience this, let's go do this, let's go do that, let's go do this. I never want to say no because I don't have the physical capability to do so. And so that's a piece of provide. The other one is providing financially. And I believe that all of us on this call, everybody listening, if you crush it in the gym, if you train hard, you show up different at work. You have more energy. You're more composed. You're more balanced. You've developed this mental toughness by doing hard things. And chances are you're probably going to have more success in your career and be able to provide more financially as well. So those are the two things we're really about, right? Train to protect and provide. As a husband, as a father, that's how I've evolved in my fitness journey from, oh, let me see if I can win the CrossFit Games, which that gave me more gifts than I could possibly explain. But this is my evolution.
The community aspect, if you guys meeting up every weekend, so it's 25 weeks now, you got 40, 50 guys all training together every weekend. There's something powerful there. And I think it's similar to, again, just coming back to camp because it's what we know. But when you get people who are similarly minded, who get a chance to share a workout together and to get to know each other, there's something really that can build upon it. And we've heard you talk about Western Digital when you guys are working together with them and building up brick and mortar, and how these companies using fitness as a way to be more productive and saying, hey, when they actually, it's almost like a 21st century water cooler where you're forcing them into a room together and to bond over the struggle. And that forces them to become closer together. And you're seemingly doing that together now in a new way through Train Hard. Is that a byproduct of not just getting fit, not just being able to protect and provide, but creating a community with these guys that are going to go beyond just the fitness aspect?
Well, and I think you bring up a really valid point, like this modern day water cooler, but I'll even take it a step further, that the gym creates distractions outdoor. So something I've been reflecting on a lot is like, why are the camaraderie and why are the connections so strong here? Like, I've owned gyms for almost 20 years and I've seen plenty of people, get engaged, get married, meet each other. Like, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, everybody's seen that. But in this particular case, I think maybe it's because it's outdoors. It's super grimy. We don't focus as much on the workout as we do on the experience, and it's all men. It brings a different energy to the plate, where not once, not twice, but once guys come 3 or 4 times, they really start to break down any barriers and they really start to connect. And I think it's because they're outdoors, they're in nature, they don't have these distractions of a fancy location. It's super grimy. We're just like doing like body weight and sandbag type stuff. But yes, to answer your question, Dave, I think it's like an evolution of what I've seen. So do I still think people connect and get great results at our gyms? Of course. But every week I do a free workout. It's always free at different libraries, different hills, different places. So basically we could give these guys the energy to then keep up with it the next week is my goal. But the something about it, man, it has been really profound. And my vision is that one day we get hundreds and thousands of these across the country in micro units where people can experience what I'm experiencing firsthand in my backyard.
I love that. And, the idea that as a father, I'm just mentioning this one last thing, and Mike, you can jump back in. But as a dad, I try to be as present as possible with my girls, and I try to be as available and to try to be a good dad. I'm traveling a lot. The fact that I work from home gives me some flexibility, but you see so many families that are lacking the ability to have a cohesive nature between mom and dad and somebody who's present so that they can lean on. And from what I'm gathering here is, what I'm taking away from it is you're creating a way for guys to feel capable and to go back to whatever situation they have at home and to feel like they can contribute. And whether that's to their kids or to their significant other, whoever they have at home, to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm physically capable. I can provide. I can come back home and feel like I'm someone that can contribute. And to me, that's critically important, of just saying, I have a presence here that's important so that, my kids and my wife, my significant other, have someone here that they can lean into.
Yeah, man, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think if you look at evolutionary, the role of the male has really changed. And I think that we've forgot that, like, at the cornerstone of what we like to do is there's a lot of purpose driven. Like, what is the purpose? And it's like, when you get a group of guys and you do hard stuff together, something occurs and you go home different and you show up different. And I get texts from wives sometimes, like people I know, and they'll be like, hey, my husband came home, showed up different today. And I'm like, I don't know what that means exactly, but hell yeah. And because it allows people to go there, do something that they maybe don't normally do, get the energy from the group, but also, doing hard things makes real life things that are hard easier to overcome. And what I've noticed firsthand in these men's groups, it's just been crazy. Like, the first one we did in my garage, then we did like another 10 in my garage. Then it got so big, I didn't want to do it in my garage anymore. So we started bringing it outside. But the first time, the second time, the third time, guys who didn't know each other just like said what's up, give a little fist pound, like shook each other's hands, like it was all good, right? And I'm not trying to be like overly preachy about meeting people. I don't want it to be uncomfortable. But then after each person saw each other like 2 or 3 times, it then became more of like a conversation. And then it became like, hey, let's go grab coffee. So now if we have 50 guys show up, I'd say about 20 of them go to coffee after. And now they're exchanging numbers. They're creating connection over things that they're both interested in, whether it's jujitsu or maybe they're both law enforcement. And it's been really cool to watch that happen, but it takes weeks and weeks, which is one of the reasons why originally I was like, oh, let's do like 3 events a year, kind of like what you guys do, like 2 events a year. And that's really great, but it's hard to create like personal connection that then can sustain in a micro environment. So like one of the ideas I have is like to get 10 guys around your neighborhood to work out in the garage together so you can actually become long-term friends, and then add in the events like what you're talking about, what you guys do, because that's like the Super Bowl. That's like badass, That's the theory. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah, I love it. It's a team. You know what I mean? I think if for anyone that participated, Jason, you played football growing up, Mike, you played football growing up, that's something that I think we all lean into, and some of the things that are maybe some of our great memories from growing up is being on a team and sharing those miserable moments together and being able to overcome them. And you're giving these adults a little bit of the taste of that again,
Yeah, I just wrote that down. Yeah, it's like the train hard. It's the train hard men's club team. It's like that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Jason, I'm like on the, I guess, social psychological side of it. It's now I'm intrigued because you have me thinking with what we do with our camps that are 2 times a year, and we're always amazed at the relationships that come from, like, I think the special thing is from our camp, it's 1 week where you are together 24/7. So like you get this like immersion of like time with people in your group, in your team. And we have people from 10 years ago that are still, they do holidays with their team from 10 years ago that they were on. And then what you're doing now with this weekly piece where, it's like this team bonding. And I'm talking a lot to get to a point is with CrossFit classes. That's one thing that I'm wondering if this is almost like a cool development from that, where like when you have your same class all the time, every day, you almost get in this click. And then it's very easy to maybe, I don't know, then you have your training partner, or you have like 2 or 3 people. But this more like immersive group where it's like, it's 1 time a week. So it's like the schedule's not quite as important. So it's not like, well, I'm always the 3 o'clock class person, so like I don't see anybody from the other ones. It seems like you get probably a lot of different types of similar people that can then come together. And that's what we see at the camp. And that's what's so special. And it's like, I'm just kind of talking out loud.
No,
it's not so much a question.
Sense.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. And your guys' camp being a week long, you really create connection. Like I went to a jiu-jitsu camp in, it's called the Origin Jiu-Jitsu Camp. It's in Maine. Super cool. But it's the same idea, and you get to connect with people. And it's not the first day, it's not the second day, it's like the 3rd, 4th day you really get to connect, because it kind of gets past that awkward phase. But there's self-selection that occurs. So let me give you an example. Most people that come are like a referral from somebody else. Mm-hmm. There is no fee except for to show up and to work your best effort, right? And so you're getting it self-selected because people be like, hey, I don't know, Dave, you should come to this event. And then all of a sudden they just show up and they have no idea what to do. But I think a few things we're doing, and I don't know how this is going to evolve, right? We're 25 weeks in every week. I don't know how it's going to evolve, but what I do know that is really cool about it, it's always outdoors. It's always early, like 5:30, 6 in the morning, always, because it self-selects for people that are prepared to go to bed. And if you want to drink all night and still show up, like, dude, you're more than welcome. But it allows people to prioritize their health in the morning on a weekend, and then go to kids' sports and go do whatever else they want to do. So you're finding those type of people. And something else that I'm doing that I don't know where this is going to play out long term, but unlike a CrossFit gym where I would be the coach and then I would walk around and coach people, right? In this particular setting, I definitely lead the group, but I do the workout. So it's very little coaching. It's more of an energy exchange, right? Like, hey guys, we're gonna go hit this, we're gonna hit this, we're gonna hit this, we're gonna do this EMOM. We never do 4-time workouts. It's always like limited loads. So no one knows if you're doing 10 squats or 50 squats, it doesn't matter. But I think maybe me doing it with the group changes the dynamic a little bit. So that's just something else I wanted to add in there. But yeah, man, you guys see it firsthand at your guys' camps. And that's all we're trying to do is, like, in a world where everything has become digital, I feel like you create these digital communities online like Facebook, but like it's not really the same because people could be really mean behind a computer, or even across an email. And when you're in person, you can actually really get to know somebody and have valid conversations. Like last week we did one, and we were talking about homeschooling versus your traditional public school, let's just say. That online could have become a very contentious battle. But in person, you start actually being able to open your mind and have a conversation about it. And someone might say something that might be a little bit off-putting, but then they keep talking like, oh, okay, I get what he's trying to say. But you don't have that when you're on Facebook groups.
Yeah, it's a lack of context. I think that's the challenging part. You don't really have context when you're not in person with that. You don't understand inflection of what's going on in the person's voice. It's just, text, and it can be taken however that person is internally visualizing it. So it's hard to have those things kind of really have depth to them. Jiu Jitsu, we got to go into it. I know it's something that's kind of the forefront of your mind.
Are you guys practicing yet or what?
Jordan
One of us,
is,
so we brought
Jordan
sure
is all in. Jordan's all in. And actually a lot of our Power Monkey team as well. I think since COVID, it hasn't happened as much, but there used to be a lot of rolling going on during open gym time.
I'm pretty sure we were told we weren't allowed to once COVID hit. And so we just never recovered after that.
COVID definitely made it a little harder but it definitely started to permeate within the coaching ranks at Power Monkey. And I have not done it. I wrestled a lot growing up. So like wrestling was one of my core sports, along with gymnastics, baseball, and I played a ton of sports, but I love wrestling, and I can see a lot of similarities in jiu-jitsu world and how technique focused it is. I think a lot of people who just see it from the outside don't maybe understand how much technique there is to it. But I'm just scared that I'm going to get torn up. Like, I'm worried that my knees are just going to snap in half. Like, I've had 3 torn ACLs, MCLs, meniscus. I've had 3 knee surgeries, shoulder. And I'm like, I'm just a little dude. My legs are like twigs. Someone's going to put me in a hole and just snap me in half. And I'm like, especially a white belt gets me, I'm like done. So I'm just curious from your.
You got to do it. I mean, here's the thing, right? It's like, this isn't the exact same parallel, but like a lot of people don't want their kids to play football. And is there a risk to football? Of course. Is there a risk to jiu-jitsu? Absolutely. Is there a risk to gymnastics? Yes. Is there a risk walking down the street? 100%, right? But at what point do the benefits outweigh the risk? And then at what point can you mitigate some of that risk so that it does get to that point, right? Like, so there's like this scale. And you could use that in almost any sport. Like, look at gymnastics. There's a reason why when they're doing something on the uneven bars, right? And they're doing like some type of crazy whatever, someone's there to spot them, or there's an extra pad. It's their way of kind of like balancing out the risk versus reward, right? In jiu-jitsu, it's a similar idea where I could see from the outside looking in, you're like, bro, they look like they're just tangled up. It looks whatever. But that chest, like that dynamicness is what makes it super fun. Jiu-jitsu, for those people who are unfamiliar, especially Brazilian jiu-jitsu, can be done in 2 different ways. One is with a gi. A gi can best be described as like a robe, is the best description. The other is no gi, which is like a rash guard and a pair of shorts. I do both. Most people do both. But let's talk about the gi, because the gi is where you get belts and all that kind of stuff. It's more traditional. I think that if you're interested in jiu-jitsu, if you found CrossFit, if you listen to Dave or any of these guys talk about different skills in gymnastics or name the skill, you are not even getting close to unlocking your human potential if you don't start exposing yourself to jiu-jitsu. Like, it's not even close. And I'm speaking for myself. I spent the better part of a decade trying to learn all different skills. I get on the mats. Every day you learn and you unlock a new pathway from your brain to your body. And it is incredibly rewarding. So what drove me to CrossFit in the beginning was a coach, a community, and complexity. The complexity piece really inspired me. I wanted to get my first muscle up. I wanted to get my first handstand push-up. I wanted to get my first snatch at name the weight. But then once you get so good at something, you no longer see those huge gains. You maybe get 1%, 2%, whatever. And maybe at some point, like me, you go the opposite direction in certain ways, right? Like, I'm never going to hit 30 muscle ups in a row again, or whatever it is. But then all of a sudden you find something like jiu-jitsu where every day you're able to get this complexity piece that keeps you guessing and keeps you inspired. If you do it the right way and you start off with privates and you check your ego at the door and you find good training partners, Jiu-jitsu a year from now, I promise you will not regret. But start that way. Start with privates, start with a good training partner, and a year from now, you're going to message me somehow. You're going to be like, bro, I listened to you on that podcast, and man, it changed my game. So I'm off my soapbox now, but
all
it
right.
does.
No, that was valuable. Jordan,
right,
what do you got to say about that? Would you recommend a similar approach?
Jordan, I think we know what we're getting Dave for his birthday this year.
A knee brace? A knee brace?
a knee brace and a private session at one of the local gyms in Portland.
I think doesn't MDV live in Portland now?
He did. Now he's in Southern California.
Okay, but he was going to he was doing jiu-jitsu there, so he could probably make a good recommendation of a place for Dave to go.
Yeah, 10th Planet. Yeah.
Oh, he's going to 10th Planet. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely no gis at 10th Planet Gym, but how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu now, Jay?
8 years.
8 years. So how long was it? I know you said you were doing privates to start, but how long was it before you felt like you were able to not just straight muscle everything? You understood how to just relax a little bit more and kind of lean into the technique?
It took about a year, you know, especially for anybody listening who's like a CrossFit kind of guy or super strong. The hardest part about jiu-jitsu, and the reason why I recommend privates, at least to start, is that you're going to walk in there, you're going to say, hey, check my ego at the door, be a good training partner, don't be a dick. That's what you're going to tell yourself because you're a good human. But you're going to get there and someone's going to put their hands on you and you're going to spaz out. It's going to happen because as a man in particular, very few men know what it feels like to have another guy on top of them. And when you do, it freaks you out. And then you start going crazy and using your strength. And then guess what that other person feels? They feel like, oh God, this person is trying to hurt me. And all of a sudden it's just like, and so in the beginning, like just start off with privates because then it's an easy pecking order. Meaning if Dave goes in and does privates for the first time with some brown or black belt, the order has already been established. They can submit him if they want, but they choose to educate. And then he knows that this guy's really good. So then he's able to work positions, understand it. And then eventually, once he starts to feel that uncomfortableness go away, that's when you start getting into, you know, more classes, more sparring, stuff like that. And I think when I first started, I did it the wrong way. You know, I just jumped into class and then I would spar. I'd always tell people before I roll with them, like, hey, look, I have a background in something else. I'm not great at jiu-jitsu, but I have a background in something else. And I could just, looking back on it now, I would be the least favorite person to roll with because I was bigger and stronger, but I had shit for technique, and it probably came off like I was trying to hurt him. And for that, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. The thing that you said in the beginning there where you're talking about like you first go in and you're a white belt and you don't have any comfort or familiarity with what it's like to be in an altercation like that. So you spaz out and you freak out. Going back to your point even before that about how people say that it's risky to potentially do jiu-jitsu, but think about how risky it is in life if you did end up getting into a physical altercation and you had no awareness and you were that white belt. You're going to freak out and you're probably going to hurt yourself more than you're going to hurt the other person in a real life situation. So I think that like anything, it makes sense to become comfortable in the situations that you could potentially find yourself in. That's why like when we train, yes, there's certain, and not just in jiu-jitsu, but in the gym, like there are certain areas that you want to stay in that's safe to train in, but life's going to put you outside of those situations. So you better be comfortable there. Otherwise, you're going to, as you said, be a white belt and spaz out and probably hurt yourself. So I think there's an argument that goes against the idea that, oh, jiu-jitsu is risky. Like, well, it's risky maybe not to do jiu-jitsu. Yeah,
well, and think about it this way. If you do it the right way, you can start to mitigate some of that risk. So you take your time. You start with privates. You start to understand it. You warm up properly, right? And you tell yourself, check your ego, like you've tattooed on your wrist, because inevitably there will be a time, and you know when you get hurt, it's because you didn't check yourself. It's because you tried to, you know, someone had your arm trapped and you didn't want to tap because you thought you can get out of it. Dude, it's not worth it. Just let it go. Now, because I'm a brown belt, you could add in knee bars and, you know, all types of foot locks and ankle locks and those type of things. When they come on strong. And so you got boom, tap quick. And the whole rule of thumb is, you know, tap early, tapped often, you'll tap less later is a good way to think about it. But back to the jiu-jitsu thing just for a second, you know, one of the reasons why I got into it for two reasons. One is that I needed a way to I needed a way to de-stress a little bit and to get my mind out of the things that I had going on at the time. And at the time, I had just retired from the sport of CrossFit when I found out Ava was diagnosed with leukemia, and I needed something else. And so, I'd go to the gym for an hour, and when you're trying not to get choked, you're not thinking about anything else but that acute moment right there and then. And it gave me the freedom, it gave me the mindset to then show up better everywhere else around me. And it still does that today. Sometimes we get so good at your sport, whether it's gymnastics, weightlifting, whatever, you could still start thinking about stuff because it's like second nature to you. I mean, Dave could walk upstairs for an hour and still, recite his, I don't know, the encyclopedia, right? Because he's so good at it. But if you put him on the mats, you're forced to focus in. That's one of the things that tactical games has also given me. But that's one of the reasons. The second reason was I was at an airport one time, and I was walking through it, and I was teaching seminars for CrossFit at the time. And this guy comes up to me, he's like, "Hey man, dude," he goes, "I really don't want to mess with you." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, he's like, "Dude, you're like super big, super strong. I really don't want to mess with you." And I'm thinking to myself, like, when I was in college, I had done Muay Thai and I had some exposure to stand-up fighting. I recognized that you could be a small person and still be super skilled. So I'd always feel like a poser because I was like, dude, I'm pretty big, pretty strong, but I didn't really know how to control somebody or defend myself. And so that was another reason why I chose jiu-jitsu, because it's a long-term art that I could learn how to control somebody if I want to without having to strike them if I choose not to.
I mean, there are some selling points here, guys. I think you're putting some perspective in there that, like I said, I'm not against it. I loved wrestling. It's still one of the things I really kind of lean into, and I appreciate that aspect of it, the technical side, but still my knees, my poor knees. I just don't want to have to go through another knee surgery.
Well, Dave is so competitive that I don't think that he could not go so hard that, he would go all in.
I can appreciate
he'd be 100% in. Yeah.
I think, I would be in for sure, but
is there like possibility to send Dave to like an all women's jiu-jitsu class that would like maybe like taper it? Well, yeah, but then it'll keep, maybe you won't be quite so aggressive, and then you'll be more likely to submit.
I got choked out by a female and I did not see it coming. And she did it like 2 or 3 times with the same technique. It was still a white belt and she got me with a baseball bat choke 3 times.
Ooh, really?
I was like, oh my God, what is happening right now? Yeah. It was
that's the thing, right? You take a woman who's skilled in jiu-jitsu and and there's a certain dynamic in the gym for sure. And it evolves over time. Like if there's a woman in the gym and there's 15, 20 dudes and there's a guy like beating up on a girl, like it's, or a guy beating up another guy, it's just handled very quickly. Like there's zero acceptance for that because this is supposed to be a space where we're all trying to get better and not like prove that we could beat up somebody that's smaller or less skilled than us. It's not the environment. But when it comes to women, it's been fascinating to watch. Like if a woman or a man walks into the gym and they train for a year from that date, they will kick their own ass and probably like 99% of populations, because it's like that whole theory of like 10,000 hours or even 20 hours doing a skill. If someone has no skill set in this and then you have 20 hours, it's a night and day advantage. It's just like any other skill. Like imagine if you spent 30 hours working on a handstand compared to the average person, your likelihood of out handstanding them is 100%.
Yeah, and like when you get that good at something, it becomes so efficient that it's not really work anymore. It's one of the things I actually hate about handstand training. And when I track it with my Garmin, it never tracks as a workout. I'm like, I have just been doing handstands for 2 hours, and this is like, you're laying on the couch right now. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
No. You become very efficient at a movement pattern when you're doing it for so long. But belts. I'm so curious about this.
Yeah, man.
I think the belt system is incredibly helpful in terms of you almost, you're gamifying your ability to get better. But is it ambiguous as to when you're prepared to go to the next level? Just like your coach just makes the decision to say, hey, you look like you're prepared for that next belt? Or is there some metric in place to say definitively, we know what the separations are from belt to belt?
Yeah, I mean, one note I want to make on jiu-jitsu before we talk about the belts is that you're absolutely right in what you just said about the handstand. That was a great analogy. And the same thing happens in jiu-jitsu. So if you become really good at jiu-jitsu and you're up against someone who is not like the same level as you, right? If you take a brown belt and you put them up against a white belt, they could use a fraction of their energy, and their Garmin or their Whoop or whatever it is won't even show they even worked out that day. Because they're able to just control them so easily, lay on them, and just like play with them. I mean, it's like a game. Same thing with handstands. But that's why I think people that do practice jujitsu need to make sure they also get after it off the mats, like assault bikes and all that kind of stuff, to get in the red, so that when they do meet an opponent who's at a similar skill set, they can know what it feels like to be in the red and make sure they have the strength and conditioning to accommodate that. Because at some point, if everybody's even on technique, the strength conditioning becomes a huge factor. If you look at guys like at ADCC, which is like the championship, the guys that are there, they're jacked, they're super fit, and they're doing stuff off the mats to help them on the mat.
All right. So I want to jump onto that really quick because there's a question here about intensity that I really wanted to ask you. And it's one of the things that always has kind of been very evident whenever I've watched you work out, whether it's in person, at the games, watching you on your IG channel, you know, working out now at home or with your kids, you always seem to be at a 10. Your intensity level working out is like maximum. And, you know, it's one of the core tenets within the methodology of CrossFit, high intensity training. But you're talking about technical training, which in some cases can be low intensity, where you're more mentally focused. There's a balance component. There's a technical piece to it. At this point in your career, how do you balance high intensity training with more low intensity training? Or is that even a factor in terms of how you approach your training?
I think when I'm ready to train, I'm pretty much just training at high intensity. Like it's hard. So in jujitsu, like I'll go for an hour and work technique, and I'm like super low key. I'm just sitting there observing. I'm practicing. You won't see me like going crazy. But once the rolls start, obviously depending on who I'm going with, I'm ready to ramp up. Same thing with my workouts. Like if I'm doing a strength session, I'm just kind of, where my workouts have changed is I still love to hit it hard in terms of like biking, rowing, kettlebell, dumbbell, moderate load, that type of stuff. I'll get after it hard. Heavy loading has become something that I have to really pay attention to. And I no longer do like moderate loading cleans. Like let's just say, I don't know, 250, 225, whatever, at like high reps without being super intentional and very focused. So because I don't expose myself to those type of loads as often anymore, I have to be very intentional when I lift heavy, and I can't allow my intensity to take over. When I do drop the load down to like a 50-pound kettlebell or whatever, I'm gonna go at it. That's kind of how it's evolved now. Whereas before I was more exposed, so I was able to get after it. Now I really need to be tuned in, especially like if I'm back squatting or whatever, I want to pay attention, because what I don't want is fitness should never inhibit the things I want or need to do. Like fitness is supposed to help me show up better. So if I get injured doing a back squat because I was being a dummy, like that's not helping me show up for my kids. Like the other day I was doing a workout, and I went with this guy, Tim Kennedy. We were in Texas, and I went and I was like, oh, I went to SHOT Show. That's where I was at. And dude, we did a ton of pull-ups, a ton. And so I ripped my hands a little bit. My biceps are sore. I can't extend my arms. And I get home the next day, and Caden's like, hey, let's go play baseball or football. And I'm like, shit. I'm like trying to throw, and I just can't throw because I can't even extend my arms. And that was a good example of like, hey, I was probably too much, right? Because it's inhibiting what I want to go do. So that's the way I look at intensity now.
Yeah. You got rhabdo. It's all right.
I got, you know, my urine might have been brown, but it's fine. I'm fine. But in regards to your belt question, there's definitely, so there's white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, and black belt. In jiu-jitsu, there's those 5 belts. And unlike taekwondo, karate, and others, it's not so much of a money grab. So there is, and traditionally with youth belts, you can get a black belt in taekwondo by the time you're like 9 years old, if you're like really at it. And they use it, I hate to use the word, I shouldn't use the word money grab, but they use it as a way to inspire the kids to keep moving up, which I think is great. Some people probably use it to generate more revenue. But in jiu-jitsu, if you tell someone you have a black belt in jiu-jitsu, the average is 10 years. So the average is 10 years to get your black belt. And I would say there's a very unwritten rule that it is frowned upon highly for an instructor or for an individual to be wearing a belt they don't deserve. It just isn't really a thing. And there's different levels to this. So you could have like pro guys who are like purple belts, but you know they're black belts in any other gym. You could have an average practitioner who becomes a black belt, but maybe they're like in their 40s or 50s, and they're a black belt within their own like right. It's kind of like when you walk in the gym, you know that guy, he's a black belt because he's been in the game a long time, he's educated, but a 25-year-old blue belt could probably beat him, or a purple belt, because he's younger, quicker, faster, whatever. But that guy's earned his rank because of his education and because of what he's contributed to the sport. But there is definitely these unwritten rules within the gym that everybody is the belt they probably should be, and the instructor is responsible for that. There is no specific criteria at most gyms. It's the instructor that decides it.
Got it. Jordan, what belt are you at right now?
I'm a purple belt.
Purple.
Jordan, did I describe that pretty well? I mean, does that kind of make sense?
I think so. There's a lot of integrity in the belt system in jiu-jitsu, and I think that I don't know, Jay, if you've ever rolled with anybody from Brazil, but we've had a couple guys come up that were like blue belts from Brazil, and they come up and we're like, holy shit, this is a little different than a blue belt up in the United States in most schools. And so there is some, I guess, gradation in that regard, but I agree with everything that you said. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, so Jordan, just to get a purple belt, it takes a long time. And what you don't want, when I got my brown belt, what I don't want, I'd rather be the guy at a blue belt that's rolling at a brown belt level than a brown belt who's maybe iffy to have it. Like that's what you don't want. You don't want to be the guy that people walk out and like, hey man, that guy, like, I don't know.
Dude. Most of the time when we have our promotions, like, there's a couple guys in the school that you're like, dude, you're totally getting your promotion, whatever, because you're just so good. And usually the response is, I hope I don't get it.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be exactly what you just said. Like, really, that guy got it? And you don't want to be like an attendance-based blue belt or something like that. You want to be somebody that like, wow, this is a long time coming. You should have gotten this 2 years ago kind of deal.
Right.
I love the integrity aspect of it.
Yeah. And then if you compete in jiu-jitsu, it's a whole different game.
Totally different.
So I competed at each belt so far, except for brown. And I'm waiting to, to kind of build a little bit more of a hedge before I compete.
Yeah. You don't want to get your brown belt and then go right into competition.
No, it's so, but the belt system definitely, what it does is sets up a hierarchy within the gym. And I think for that reason, it's really great. It kind of goes back to some like old school principles that when you have the black belt, especially in a state of martial arts, there has to be someone who is the lead. There has to be, because they're in control. And even if they're not the best guy in the room, it's clearly noted who the leader is in the room. So meaning like you might have a pro in there, but if someone else is leading the class and that's their class and it's their environment, everybody kind of like understands that person's responsible for everybody's safety in there. And it's really something special to watch when you see like a huge class go down and everybody's getting after it and you can just see people crushing it. But yet there's this underlying respect that everybody knows, like, don't mess with people. Like you have to treat people with a lot of respect.
I think that it goes like across the board in a lot of different ways. Like let's say you're rolling in a big class and two blue belts are kind of like rolling closer to another pair, and it's like a brown belt and a blue belt. Like the two blue belts know, like, okay, we're getting too close. We need to move because that brown belt's there and he's got seniority. Or another example is we had a new person come in to the 6 a.m. class on Tuesday, and she walks in the door and there was a brown belt in the front lobby getting dressed, and he's like, it's going to be my responsibility. I'm going to go take care of this person because I'm the highest ranking person here, and I want to show her like welcome and like all this stuff. So I think that there's just a lot of there's a lot that comes with the belts more than just the technique that, I think to your point, it's just a lot of respect and understanding in the gym of roles. And I think it's really positive.
You guys would love it, man. You guys would love it.
Beautiful thing.
All right. Question, Jay, before we get off the jiu-jitsu stuff, you rolled with Tim Kennedy. You also rolled with Nicky Rod.
Yep.
What were those two?
And Bushesha and the Meow brother. I've had the chance to roll with a lot of like people I shouldn't roll with.
So I watched the Nicky Rod video, and I'm curious to know, like, what is it like rolling with a guy at that level? I mean, that's like he's at the top.
The craziest thing about jiu-jitsu is there's just such levels to this game. So Mason Fowler is one of the best guys in the world. He's at a gym called Coyoteras right down the street. And I'll go there for comp class every now and then. And I'm way like out of my league. Like it's way above my pay grade when I go there. But yet if I go to most other gyms, like I'm within my pay grade. I'm good. It's all good. But then you go there and it is just like, it's the difference between a CrossFit Games level guy and someone who like, does well in the open. I don't know. It's like they're both competitors, but there's just levels to this game. And in jiu-jitsu, there's huge levels to this game. And when you get to the pro level, you could basically do anything you want with anybody you want, whenever you want. Like that's the confidence these guys have. I mean, they could do anything. Like even with this guy, like the last time I went to comp class, and like let's just take Nicky Rod. In a 6-minute roll, he could probably tap me at least 4 times if he chooses to, at least. But the average person, even the same belt, like that won't happen. But these guys they're just so talented at what they're doing that they can just manipulate the body so well. And for that, like, I'm very grateful. And that's what I'm striving to get to, because that's part of the art that keeps it super exciting.
Yeah. The camp you went to, the Origin camp, I've been there, and it's a phenomenal experience. And I'm sure you got exposed to some of these. They usually have incredible instructors there. I know Jocko's there. I know these other guys are there. My instructor was there. He was actually teaching. I don't know if you, he said he didn't have a chance to meet you because he knew you were going to be there. His name is Brian Viglione. He teaches some of the black belt sessions and brown belt sessions. Usually do black and browns together sometimes, but yeah, it's an incredible camp. It's very much like Power Monkey Camp. It's on a lake. Everybody's staying in cabins. You've got 3 sessions a day. Like, the food is awesome. Like, it's the exact same thing, just without the violence at our camp.
And then I brought the CrossFit component there, which I'm really excited about. Like, I was able to bring a CrossFit type class there, just teaching about range of motion, large load, long distance, just talking about all the things that we all know about. And it was super well received, because a lot of people that just get focused on the mats, there's tons of value. Obviously, I've been preaching it for the last 20 minutes. But at the same time, I think there's just as much value, if not more value, in having this baseline of fitness. Like, if you're just doing jiu-jitsu and you have all this technique, but you can't breathe, it doesn't help you. So that was the part that I brought to the camp.
That's awesome. All right. So question for both you, Jordan and Jay. We started to expand Power Monkey Camp into some other areas that are not niche to CrossFit.
Yes.
So
yes.
Okay. Well, wait for the question.
You heard it here first.
And we do these breakout sessions. So Jeff Martone teaches actually a striking for female session. We're bringing in plate loaded machines, and Dave Lipson and Camille are coming out to do hypertrophy training for the first time.
Indian clubs.
We did Indian clubs with Great Cook, which was awesome from FMS. If we were to add a rolling session, jiu-jitsu session, who would be a good instructor to invite out to that community for a few hours to introduce it to people who are familiar with CrossFit? Who would you kind of have in mind? Maybe it's yourself, but anybody.
John, or Jordan, John Danaher. How about that?
Huh? Oh my God. You know what? I don't want to, I hope that I edit this podcast, so this clip's not getting out, but he's an incredible wealth of knowledge. I think incredible. I can't listen to him.
It's too slow.
It's slow, and it's so overly worded, and like I think that his knowledge base is almost second to none. Like, he is incredible, but I have a really hard time watching his videos, and that's unfortunate, because I know the knowledge there is incredible.
We could I mean, if you guys want to get an instructor out, we could definitely find someone that's nearby that could be a great, jiu-jitsu, just like CrossFit, you don't have to be a world champion to be a great instructor. You just have to have a good knowledge base and the ability to express that to new people, especially there. Like, you need an instructor who could bring it down to a level and then be able to describe it and make people feel really comfortable, especially in close quarters like that. This will be, like, even like striking, you have like that 3 feet. When you all of a sudden get underhooks on someone, or you grab them behind, like, it is intimidating. So finding an instructor that could put a baseline there, I think, is really important. So we could talk about that more offline, because I'd love to identify someone that could help you guys with that. So I think more people, especially women, need exposure to this type of training. Men need it for one reason. I think women need it for a whole other slew of things. Like, a trained woman, if she knows how to attack and attack violently, if she's ever attacked, dude, game changer.
Yeah. My wife Sadie, she's done a couple of sessions with Martone. She comes back and she just like keeps punching me, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you want to kick my ass, like, and now you have the tools to be able to do it. Like, it's not meant for me. This is meant for others.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, are you familiar at all? I'm sure you're familiar, but do you have any interaction with Marcelo Garcia?
I mean, I'm familiar with it. No, I don't have any interaction.
I feel like he would be like, he would have the exact right vibe. He's very like disarming, but he's little, but he is like an expert, multi-time world champion, just super nice dude. Actually, I think that Hoffy knows people that are friends with him. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that the long and short of this is that everybody should try Jiu Jitsu. You know, I
sounds
think
like it. It sounds like it. Thank you, Jay, for diving so deeply into the Jiu Jitsu. And I know it was a little bit of a play to Jordan too, because he's been wanting to have an outlet to be able to talk about one of his loves for a while now.
Talk about it with me, so I'll mute myself and sit in the back now that we're done.
It's just like CrossFit. It's like, how do you know if someone does CrossFit? Oh, they talk about it all the time. It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu, man. It's like once you get into it, you really start to fall in love with it. And I think that it's definitely on the rise. And I think the combination of that and strength and conditioning is like the key.
Well, we've gone through a bunch of stuff, and I know how important your time is, but I do have one more kind of question for you to kind of tie it up, if that's cool with you.
Sure.
So along with the AMRAP mentality, which, is in your book, it's, been around for a number of years now. It's a phenomenal resource within the cross community and business and beyond. And finding your why is kind of point number one. And it kind of like goes through this idea of starting out with your why, and then you talking about reevaluation at that endpoint. And at this point in your career, after having so many different iterations from being a competitive athlete and then moving into new spaces in business and now into tactical and we're talking about jiu-jitsu, when you wake up on a daily basis, what is your number one kind of guiding light? Like, what are you trying to achieve at this point? What is your next big endeavor that you're really trying to get after?
I mean, I think it's a daily base. On a daily basis, I'm trying to ask myself, like, hey man, like how am I doing? How can I improve? How can I reach my potential in these different areas? And I mean, dude, because what would keep me up at night is, let's just say 10, 20 years from now, you look back, you're like, damn, we could have done more. And when I think about that from a business perspective, what can we do from a train hard perspective to make a bigger impact? So I don't look back and be like, dude, we had great momentum and then it just fizzled because we didn't put in the work. Or same thing, like my kids, while they still like me, right? Like, and hopefully they continue to like me for the rest of their life. But it's like at these pivotal moments, how can I prioritize them? Because that's time I'm not getting back. And, those are the things that I think about on a regular basis is, reaching my potential in those different areas, and how the why has just been like clear cut to that, like reach your potential, reach your potential, reach your potential. And if you are saying that, and if you're being intentional with everything you're trying to do, then you can't get mad. Like there's certain things I look back on, as a parent, and I'm sure everybody listening, where you're like, dude, I didn't do it. I kind of messed up there. But if you're intentional and you're trying the best you can, like you can't beat yourself up for it too much. And I've been reflecting a lot on that lately with Ava and her current diagnosis. Like, where did we play a role? What did we do? And how can I turn that from, feeling like, oh boy, to like, okay, well, we made the best decision we could at the time we did. Now, how can I share that and educate other people in the future so that they don't make the same navigating things? Because I don't regret those things, because at the time we were being intentional. We were trying to do our best, just like I am today. And that's what I think about as the why, the bigger why,
Yep. I love it. It basically comes down to having no regrets about the decisions you make, right? And taking in everything you can to make and to do the best you can with that information.
Because that's all you could do. And then when stuff comes up, man, like instead of just being in a shitty situation, try and turn it into something you can learn from. And that's kind of where I'm really focused on, like as of today.
Absolutely. Well, I lied. That wasn't the last question. We have some quick ones for you.
Okay.
Let's just keep it within the jiu-jitsu world if it's easiest that way. But is there someone that would be a good interview for us to have on the podcast? Someone maybe you've come across recently, or somebody that would be a good interview?
For jiu-jitsu, I mean, Mason Fowler would be a good one. Yeah, you should have him on.
Jordan can link that one up. Let's make it happen. All right, next. If you are a book reader, is there a book that you're into right now that's worth passing along? If not, a movie or a TV show?
I just bought Fight Club as a book. I didn't realize it was a book. I thought it was just a movie.
Yeah,
I have not read it yet.
All right.
Dave, I'd like to submit a new final question. We usually do, which we've asked him before.
Live on the air.
The two, like, because we
we don't want to ask that again.
Right. So I have a new one. So normally we ask which sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics? You answered the last time you were on the podcast. So now, and Dave, if you're cool with it, what do you prefer, gi or no gi? And rationale to back it up.
I'm going to say the gi. I prefer the gi. And I prefer the gi because I think you have more tools. I think that it's a little bit of a different type of game, and it doesn't get as slippery. And so because it's not so slippery, I don't have to worry about just like flying all over the mat. So for those reasons, I'd say gi, but I like them both.
Fair enough.
Jordan, you're on the same page with that?
I like the gi more as well. But I will say that because we train both gi and no gi, and I think that no gi training benefits my gi training more so than my gi training benefits my no gi.
For sure. No question.
But
can we make that the intro clip to just confuse a lot of people, like at the start of the episode? Like,
what are these guys
no gi helps my gi, but my gi doesn't help my no gi.
They think we're talking about gi maharios. They're like, why is gi the conversation point? Jason, thanks so much for the time today, man. Really appreciate it. I love catching up with you, man. You always have such great things to contribute to the community. I love what you're doing. And where can people follow up with everything you got going on right now?
I mean, best place, you could just check out TH as in trainhard.fit. So th.fit. That's going to be our online community that we're looking to build into an in-person community over time, especially if you're in the Bay Area. And then Jason Khalipa on Instagram, the Jason Khalipa podcast. We have a badass newsletter that I think really can provide a lot of value called the Never Zero newsletter. Those are the three things I think that I think our newsletter, I think it's great. So check that out.
Absolutely, we will. And we're going to be down in the Bay Area in May. If our time works out, we'd love to come down and say hello in person if you're up for it.
Dude, you're coming to the garage gym. We're going to hit a workout. We're going to sauna. We're going to cold plunge, and we're going to get on with our day. It's going to be great.
Done.
Make them do some jujitsu in your garage too.
And jujitsu. Hey, we should film your first jujitsu experience.
All right. Sounds good. We'll make a whole day of it. Well, thanks again, Jason. We appreciate the time, buddy.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Take care. For all listeners out there, please be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Mike Service. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Dave Durante with my co-host Mike Service and Jordan Samuel today. Until next time, thank you all for listening.